A mysterious man in khakis walks into his own restaurant, disguised. He's not here to dine. He's here to expose sabotage, reclaim family, and uncover a secret that's been simmering for 7 years. The story of Grant Whitmore will take you through a whirlwind of emotions, not just restoring order, but leading to a powerful and heartfelt reunion. Don't miss a moment of it. The old baseball cap was pulled low, hiding his high forehead, while a pair of non-prescription glasses reflected the glow of Seattle's streetlights in the drizzling dusk. Grant Whitmore stood silently beside the silver gray sedan he'd borrowed from his assistant, far from the luxury BMW he usually drove. He studied his reflection in the car window, adjusting the collar of his white shirt and the faded khaki jacket that had weathered many years. Tonight, he wasn't the celebrated founder of the Whitmore Prime restaurant chain. Tonight, he was just Grant Evans, an ordinary middle-aged man coming in for dinner at the very place he'd built from nothing. Beneath the disguise was a heart caught between apprehension and resolve. Lately, the online reviews of Whitmore Prime, Hawthorne Avenue, the flagship location and his greatest pride, had grown more divided. Some praised the new creative dishes, but others complained about inconsistent service and long wait times. Though Grant had long delegated day-to-day operations to regional directors, he had never forgotten his original philosophy. Every steak served must carry a sense of integrity. "It's time to face the truth," he muttered, locking the car before striding toward the restaurant's entrance. The glass door opened to reveal the warm, signature ambience of Whitmore Prime, amber lighting cascading down polished walnut paneling, the aroma of grill meat mingling with a whisper of smoke from the open kitchen, and a familiar clinking of glasses and silverware, like a symphony he'd heard 1,000 times. It was Friday night. The dining room was nearly full, not packed, not sparse, just the way their reservation system was designed to keep it. "Welcome to Whitmore Prime." A hostess greeted him with a polite smile. "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes. Name's Grant Evans." "Table for one," he replied. She glanced quickly at the screen, then nodded. "Of course. Right this way." We prepared a lovely table by the window. Grant followed her, his eyes casually sweeping across the room. The carpet at the entrance was a bit worn but clean. Tables were neatly set, and the waitstaff moved gracefully in their well-rehearsed rhythm. But something in the air made him frown, a feeling he couldn't quite name, like a quiet fatigue hidden behind polished professionalism. The window table offered a wide view of both the dining room and the semi-open kitchen. From there, he could see chefs in white uniforms moving with precision behind the glass. One of them, young, sharp-eyed, was plating a rack of ribs with such intense focus that it drew Grant's attention without effort. "Your server tonight is Olivia," the hostess announced, setting down the menu. "She'll be with you shortly." Grant nodded and opened the menu, one he knew like the back of his hand. But tonight, he would read it as a true guest, not to inspect, but to feel, to listen with the heart, as he once did standing in his father's cramped kitchen, learning to cook not with recipes, but with care. And from that moment on, the journey to rediscover the true soul of Whitmore Prime officially began. Less than 5 minutes after he sat down, Grant was greeted by Olivia Chun, a server with a genuine smile and a voice that was soft but professional. She didn't recognize him. Good. The name Grant Evans didn't exist in any internal record. "Good evening, Mr. Evans. I'm Olivia. Tonight, our head chef Julian is offering a special bourbon glazed ribeye, served with caramelized shallots and a light crust of blue cheese. It's been one of our most popular dishes lately." "Julian?" Grant asked, pretending not to know. "Julian Walker, our new executive chef. He joined about 3 months ago. Each week, he creates a new special of his own." Grant nodded slightly, thanked her, and looked again toward the kitchen. Sure enough, it was the young man he had noticed earlier. Swift movements, every gesture a blend of disciplined technique and innate culinary instinct. Under the kitchen lights filtered to the glass wall, he looked like a performer on stage. Each flick of the wrist, each slice of the blade, precise and inspired, yet never flamboyant. "I'll have the ribeye," Grant said, "medium rare, and the house salad to start as usual." As he waited, Grant kept observing. The restaurant atmosphere was steady, no visible chaos, but certain interactions between staff caught his attention. A female server handed over an order slip while frowning, saying something to Julian. The young chef only nodded silently and returned to his work. No back and forth, no frustration. Just a deep focus that bordered on solitude. The salad arrived quickly. Fresh greens, lightly candied walnuts, dried cranberries, and a delicately tart vinaigrette. Though simple, everything was balanced, measured just right. Enough to assure Grant that the kitchen's quality was still being upheld, at least under the hands of his lead chef. But it was the ribeye that made him pause longer than usual. The plate was set down with understated care. The thin, caramelized crust gleamed under the light. The bourbon glaze was silky, its aroma sweet yet restrained, enhancing rather than overpowering the beef's natural fragrance. The blue cheese had been sprinkled with precision, just enough to add depth without overwhelming the palate. The first cut revealed a perfect pink center, exactly medium rare. Grant brought the first bite to his mouth and chewed slowly. He closed his eyes, and in that moment, the past returned. A small kitchen from years ago, his father in an apron, teaching him how to test doneness with his fingers, how to season meat by feel, not by measuring spoons. But today's flavor was something else, a new version, more inventive, as if someone had distilled the spirit tradition and breathed new life into it. "Outstanding," he murmured. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Olivia replied with a smile, unable to hide her pride. "I'll be sure to pass your compliments along to the chef." Grant nodded, his eyes still fixed on the kitchen. Someone in there, Julian Walker, wasn't just a talented chef. He was someone who clearly understood the founding philosophy of Whitmore Prime. Respect the ingredients, uphold the values, and above all, cook with heart. Who is he really? Grant quietly wondered. And in that moment, he knew this trip had become far more personal than he'd expected. 3 days later, Seattle's sky was its usual overcast gray, light rain streaking the windshield as Grant Whitmore, again in the persona of Grant Evans, sat in his old sedan parked at the curb along Hawthorne Avenue. This time, he wasn't here for dinner but to place a takeout order, the now familiar bourbon-glazed ribeye, with truffle mashed potatoes and grilled asparagus. He arrived 15 minutes early on purpose. The pickup area was tucked behind the restaurant, near the cashier counter. There, he took a seat on a wooden bench along the wall, pretending to scroll through his phone while his eyes tracked everything, how the meals were packed, the rhythm of the staff behind the scenes. 2 cashiers were on duty, one with her red hair tied up high, her name tag reading Rachel Sims, and another shorter blonde named Tiffany Blake. They had just completed a customer's payment and took advantage of a quiet moment to lean in toward each other. Grant tilted his head slightly, quietly listening in. "Did you see Chef's special today?" Rachel said with mock enthusiasm. "More bourbon, more caramel. Like we're trying to impress Michelin judges in Manhattan or something." Tiffany giggled, leaning toward Rachel. Derek was right. Julian's trying to turn this place into some kind of food museum. Meanwhile, all customers really want is a proper steak and fries. Grant held his breath. Derek, the name made him sit upright. Derek Maddox, former sous chef of this very branch. He'd once lobbied for a promotion, but was denied after an internal review. Not long after, he left, and was now heading the kitchen at Stone and Barrel, a rival restaurant group poised to expand aggressively in the Queen and District. "So how's the plan coming along?" Rachel lowered her voice, eyes scanning the room. "Smooth as butter," Tiffany smirked. "Last week, I swapped his sea salt with regular iodized. You should have seen Julian's face when he tasted the sauce. It was like someone dumped a bucket of cold water down his spine." Rachel burst out laughing, covering her mouth with one hand. "I've been trying to extend ticket times. Just add 10 minutes to any table that orders the special. Customers are already starting to complain." Tiffany nodded. "Derek says if we keep this up, Julian will either get fired or walk out on his own. And then who's going to swoop in and save the day? Derek Maddox, the superstar chef. You know what he promised us? Shift preference, bonuses, and front row seats to next month's concert." Grant clenched his fist on his lap, blood rushing to his temples. This wasn't internal discontent anymore. It was a coordinated attack, staged from both inside and outside the system. What chilled him the most was the cruel satisfaction in the girls' voices, as if bringing down a talented man was their idea of evening entertainment. "Order for Grant Evans," a line cook called out from the kitchen. Rachel picked up the takeout bag, flashing a smile sweet as artificial sugar. "Here's your order, sir. That'll be $54.87. Grant stood up and paid without a word. In his mind, a list was beginning to form. Names, details, consequences. Not a single one would be missed. Back in the car, he didn't start the engine right away. His reflection stared back at him in the rearview mirror. This time, no longer the calm look of a customer, but the cold resolve of a man reclaiming control. "The game is on," he whispered, then stepped on the gas, merging into the Seattle rain, with a determination to smother this conspiracy before it burned everything to the ground. Over the next 2 weeks, Grant Whitmore haunted Whitmore Prime, Hawthorne Avenue like a shadow with a private agenda. Sometimes he appeared at the bar during Saturday rush hours. Other times, quietly sat in a corner on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. He no longer came to eat, but to collect every fragment of the dirty game unfolding behind the kitchen doors he once poured his soul into building. Each visit revealed something unusual. One busy night, Grant sat not far from the semi-open kitchen, sipping whiskey as he watched. A server approached the pass with a freshly grilled ribeye. "Table 14 says the steak's too tough," she said with annoyance. Julian emerged from the main kitchen, expressionless, and sliced into the steak right there on the counter. "Medium rare, textbook," he said, pointing to the pink center of the cut. "It's not tough." But the customer complained. The girl shrugged. "Chef has to redo it." Grant caught the flicker of disappointment in Julian's eyes. But the young chef didn't argue. He simply nodded and returned to the grill. Another time, Grant stumbled upon something unforgettable. In the back cold storage, off limits to guests, he spotted Julian opening a small steel cabinet. Inside weren't ingredients, but a worn brown leather notebook. Julian opened it, flipped through a few pages, and began writing, not in sentences, but in a strange method, sequences of numbers and symbols, as if it were a personal code. Grant held his breath. Julian was recording everything: delayed deliveries, held back tickets, unjustified returns, tampered ingredients, all documented in his own coded system, as if he knew he was being watched and had chosen to fight back silently. The realization sent a chill through Grant, not from fear, but respect. Julian wasn't just a gifted chef. He had strategy. On a quiet Wednesday afternoon, Grant witnessed another scene. A cold dish had been sent back. Julian walked out to the table to personally apologize and brought a freshly made plate himself. Back in the kitchen, he turned and asked, "Why did this dish sit under the heat lamp for over 10 minutes? A young busboy lowered his head. "I let them know, but Tiffany said to leave it, said the guest wasn't ready to eat yet." Julian simply nodded. No argument, no blame. He picked up the new dish and carried on. But Grant, watching from the bar, understood every act of sabotage was perfectly disguised as an accident. That evening, as Grant sat behind the wheel before pulling away, he paused. On his phone was a list he compiled over the past 14 days. Monday morning seafood orders delayed until afternoon, leaving Julian with too little time to prep. Specialty salt swapped for regular table salt, ruining the signature sauce. Ticket times deliberately stretched. Customers waiting too long, dishes going cold. Fake complaints from regulars, who turned out to be Rachel's acquaintances. But now, with the coded notebook Julian kept hidden, Grant knew he wasn't alone. Someone else was fighting too, quietly, honorably, and without giving up. And that made Grant more determined than ever. "No one gets to destroy this legacy," he whispered, before turning the ignition. On an overcast Monday afternoon, tension hung in the kitchen of Whitmore Prime, Hawthorne Avenue like a drawn bowstring. The ocean wind gusted the back window, carried with it the smoky scent of grilled meat and the damp breath of early rain. "No proper stock on hand," Julian muttered, opening a small bin beneath the prep table. Inside were carefully sealed bags of ingredients. Organic beef bones, baby carrots, Japanese shallots, bay leaves. Items he quietly bought with his own money every Sunday, used to make demi-glace in his small apartment. Just in case of sabotage, no one in the kitchen team knew. Not a single complaint ever passed his lips. Julian cooked as if nothing was happening. Even as the number of returned dishes kept rising, as ticket times were mysteriously shuffled or orders accidentally vanished from the system, he kept moving with steady precision, checking his ingredients, adjusting sauces to seasonal flavors, adding final touches the way he'd learned from his father, from culinary school, from years wandering between Portland and Seattle to hone his craft. Once, when a middle-aged customer grew angry over a cold salmon dish, Julian personally came to the table, apologized sincerely, offered a complimentary dessert, and bowed his head. Then he returned to the kitchen, without a single word of blame for the server. Grant witnessed it all from his familiar perch near the bar, a half-finished old-fashioned in hand. He'd seen talented chefs lose their temper when wrongly blamed, seen others crumble under less pressure than this. But Julian was different. He didn't roar. He didn't scream into the void. He didn't run to social media to air grievances. He chose to fight back with calm resolve. One Saturday night, the kitchen descended into chaos when the main oven suddenly shorted out, its thermostat system scorched. Julian called for no one. He simply took off his chef jacket, cleaned the mess himself, then moved all grilled items to the secondary oven, doubling prep time, but maintaining doneness and flavor. Grant remembered that moment clearly, Julian's eyes reflecting the flicker of flame, his face unshaken. The entire kitchen seemed to freeze. Then a young line cook, Noah Reyes, stepped in to help. Moments later, Margaret Doyle, one of the veteran staff, joined them. 2 became 3. Then the whole kitchen brigade was silently cleaning together. No slogans, no commands. Integrity spreads on its own. After the shift, when Julian thought no one was watching, he quietly opened the weather-brown leather notebook, wrote a short entry in his private code, then tucked away in the locked drawer. After that, he returned to the cutting board, wiped it down, aligned his knives, and left the restaurant like he always did. No applause, no send-off. But behind the glass door, someone was watching. Grant Whitmore, fingers tightening slightly around his glass, eyes locked on the young chef's retreating figure. A real head chef doesn't need to shout to prove himself, he thought. He cooks the way I once dreamed justice would feel, quiet, but impossible to ignore. Morning broke clear after a rainy night, sunlight filtering gently through the skyscrapers of downtown Portland, casting a pale glow across the glass facade of Whitmore Group Tower, the building where Grant Whitmore still attended monthly Friday strategy meetings. But today, he arrived earlier than usual, alone, no assistant, no appointment. He stepped into the HR department on the 11th floor with a heavy mind, weighed down by everything he had seen during those silent days shadowing Julian. The eerily familiar motions, the way he seasoned, even the way he brushed his hair back when stressed. Exactly like someone Grant once knew but never dared to name. "I'd like access to the employee files for the Hawthorne Avenue branch," Grant said to the HR director in an even voice. Specifically, the current head chef, Julian Walker. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. Here it is," the HR staff member said, fingers tapping across the keyboard before turning the screen toward him. Julian Walker, hired 6 months ago, interviewed by the West Regional Manager. This is a full file. Grant pulled the chair closer. A glance at the Culinary Institute of the Pacific Diploma sent a strange chill down his spine. But it was the education section below that stopped him cold. University of Colorado, Boulder, major, business, withdrew in 3rd year. A familiar name surfaced in his mind. And then, as if an invisible hand tore open a sealed door, all the old memories rushed in. Summer afternoons grilling with their late father, the heated arguments when Julian dropped out of college to pursue culinary school, and the final night they spoke, the front door slamming shut between 2 generations, 2 stubborn mirrors of each other. He clicked on the personal ID attachment. The photo appeared on screen. Those eyes, that gaze, there was no doubt now. Julian Walker was Julian Whitmore, his younger brother. Grant recoiled from the screen as if punched in the chest. His hands clenched. A surge of emotion rose and caught hard in his throat. Still following the story? Did you figure out they were brothers before Grant pulled a file? If so, drop a 1 in the comments, because that's some sharp instinct. Shocking, isn't it? That they were siblings all along? 7 years apart. 7 years without a single message. And now, he had recognized his own brother. Not by family resemblance, not by blood ties, but by a steak. A steak that tasted like childhood, like summer noons, like laughter on the porch and their father's voice in the kitchen. Cook with kindness, and you'll never go wrong. Julian hadn't used the Whitmore name. He'd taken their mother's, Walker. A deliberate choice, a conscious distance. Grant exhaled deeply, resting his forehead in his hand. Guilt washed over him. Why hadn't he recognized it sooner? Why did he need an HR file to remember his own blood? There was only one date marked in the personal special days section. July 17th, their father's birthday. Circled every year. Never forgotten. Grant opened his phone, scrolling to an old photo in his archive. Their father in the center, arms around both sons, apron stained with sauce, laughing too hard to wipe the sweat from his face. Julian, he whispered into quiet. A moment later, Grant stood up, eyes still rimmed with red, but his stride was steadier. This time, he wasn't just a CEO on an investigation. He was a brother, coming home. The next morning, Grant Whitmore didn't go to the office. Instead, he made a direct call to the head of security at Whitmore Group, a former intelligence officer who once worked in the risk control division for the restaurant chain. "Jason," Grant said into the phone, his voice firm, "I need all camera footage from the kitchen, cashier area, and manager's office at the Hawthorne Avenue branch. At least the last 30 days. Jason replied with just one word, "Understood." 3 hours later, Grant sat in a small surveillance room on the 3rd floor of the headquarters tower, a windowless space filled with large monitors and a recording system that captured live footage from restaurants across the country. On screen, time rewound like a film on fast-forward. From the kitchen cam, last week, Rachel Sims swiftly pulled an order ticket from the pass window the moment Julian turned his back. From the storage cam, 3 days ago, Tiffany Blake unscrewed the cap on a jar of specialty seasoning, poured out the sea salt, and replaced it with ordinary iodized salt. From the manager's office cam, Friday, 6:42 p.m., Manager Kyle Benson leaned across his desk to shake hands with a man in a black coat, Derek Maddox, the former sous chef at Whitmore Prime, now working at a competing restaurant. A yellow envelope passed across the table. Moments later, Kyle locked his drawer. Grant leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the monitor. He no longer had to speculate. Everything was clear now. Derek, the man who once served as sous chef in this very kitchen, had orchestrated all after being passed over for the head chef position. He hadn't just left quietly. He left behind a network of sabotage. Rachel and Tiffany were pawns. Kyle was the gatekeeper. And through it all, Julian had stood his ground like a silent warrior, cooking by day, enduring betrayal by night. Grant hit the archive button and ordered the footage to be copied onto a personal hard drive. Don't share this with anyone. Don't notify anyone. I want every staff member present in the main dining hall of Hawthorne Avenue tomorrow afternoon. We'll be holding a special routine meeting. Jason nodded, knowing full well that in Grant Whitmore's vocabulary, special meant zero tolerance. That evening, Grant sat in his home office, the ice in his bourbon slowly melting on the table. On his laptop, the footage replayed, scene by scene, with irrefutable evidence. But there was still one thing he hadn't done: talk to Julian. He glanced at a photo on the bookshelf, an old picture of the three of them, him, Julian, and their father, standing by the red brick backyard grill. Julian was only 14, holding tongs with a wide grin. Grant, at 22, stood beside him, brow furrowed, worried the first steak might burn. That same little brother, now grown, was fighting an invisible war no one else could see. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "tomorrow you'll know I was always watching." And this time, he wouldn't let his brother fight alone. The next afternoon, at exactly 4:30 p.m., the atmosphere inside Whitmore Prime. Hawthorne Avenue was noticeably tense. Off-shift employees had been instructed to be present in the main dining hall. Those currently working were relieved early. Direct orders from corporate. What stirred the staff more than anything was the rumor Grant Whitmore would be arriving, in person, unannounced. When the restaurant doors swung open, the sound of leather shoes clicked steadily against the dark tile floor. Grant walked in, no baseball cap, no sunglasses. This was Grant in full form. A tailored charcoal suit, a lapel pin bearing the Whitmore Prime emblem. His eyes swept the familiar space, though it now felt strangely distant. "Good afternoon," he said to the hostess, who nearly dropped her tablet at the sight of him. "Please inform Manager Kyle that I'll be leading today's staff meeting, right here. And I want everyone present, from head chef to dishwasher." His words rang with quiet authority, needing no volume to command every eye in the room. Kyle Benson appeared minutes later, visibly pale, forcing a smile. "What an honor to have you dropping like this." "That's right, Kyle," Grant replied coolly. "I need the real picture of how this place runs, not a polished report." At exactly 5 p.m., the entire staff was gathered, standing in a semicircle around the dining room, its tables clear to form a makeshift stage. The lighting dimmed. A small projector sat atop the bar. Grant stepped to the center, hands clasped behind his back. "I'm Grant Whitmore, founder of Whitmore Prime. For 15 years, we've built this brand on 2 core values, quality and integrity, not just in the food we serve, but in the way we treat one another." A soft click. The first image appeared on the white wall. Rachel Sims pulling an order ticket from the past window the moment Julian turned away. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Next frame. Tiffany Blake replacing the specialty salt with regular table salt, then laughing with a nearby server. Next, Manager Kyle Benson accepting a yellow envelope from Derek Maddox, shaking hands, then sliding it into his drawer. Silence. Grant turned to Kyle. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Kyle stammered. I just thought Derek could help the restaurant. He used to be. Make the restaurant better by sabotaging talent?" Grant's voice lowered, but it was steel. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Rachel, Tiffany, you too. Remove your name tags. Leave. Now." A security staff member, already stationed in advance, stepped in, silently reinforcing the order. Rachel burst into tears. Tiffany protested loudly, and Kyle backed away slowly toward the office, dazed. Grant turned to the rest of the staff. "Anyone who played a part in this, if you don't speak now, don't expect a chance to explain later. I'll be reviewing the full data for the past 3 months. Silence today will be evidence tomorrow." A bartender and 3 servers quietly stepped out of line. "Thank you," Grant said, not angry, just weary. "You did the right thing, late but better than never." As the door closed behind them, Grant took a deep breath. His eyes locked on Julian, standing at the back of the room, still in his chef's uniform, his expression steady, though his eyes held something else, a flicker of layered emotion. "Julian Walker," Grant said, then hesitated. "Or rather, Julian Whitmore. I'd like to speak with you. Alone." The dining hall fell silent. Julian nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised, only relieved. The truth, finally, had been called by its real name. The manager's office behind the kitchen was eerily quiet. The walls were a sterile gray, the desk almost too tidy, as if no one ever really lived there. Only 2 men remained. Grant Whitmore, the founder of Culinary Empire, and Julian Whitmore, the younger brother who once cast off that name to carve his own path. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Yet it sealed 7 years of silence. Julian stood tall, fingers still gripping the hem of his chef's coat. "So, Grant nodded, his eyes noticeably softer. "The file, the code, the ribeye. But honestly, I think I knew from the first bite." Julian said nothing. The yellow light from above cast long shadows of their figures across the wooden floor. "I didn't come to lecture or command," Grant continued. "I came because I've seen a chef fight every day, without complaint, without leaning on anyone, without quitting, even when the whole system turned against him. And I realized no one could do that unless he shared my blood." Julian looked down, then let out a quiet laugh, a choked, hollow one. "I wasn't trying to be brave. I just didn't want you to think I was weak." "You're not weak," Grant answered immediately. "You're stubborn, like me. You're proud, just like me. The only difference is you had the courage to walk away, and I stayed." A long silence stretched between them. Julian braced himself against the desk, head bowed. Back then, I was angry when you said you wanted to help me stabilize my career. I felt like an investment, not your brother. Grant exhaled softly. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I never listened to you. And then I let that anger last 7 years. I was wrong too, Julian said, lifting his head. I cut you off. I left without explaining. I convinced myself that if I could succeed without the Whitmore name, only then would I be worthy. And now, Grant stepped forward, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. I don't need you to give up any name. I just need you to be Julian, the executive chef of Whitmore Prime, exactly as you always deserve to be. Julian looked at him. Eyes that had once gone dry now glistened. Grant extended his hand. This is an invitation. It's an affirmation. No one appointed you. You earned this. Julian hesitated for a moment. Then, instead of shaking hands, he stepped forward and embraced the older brother he once saw as a rival. No more opponents. No more pride-fueled distance. Just two men, two sons of the same father, finally standing side by side in a room they should have shared long ago. Outside, the last light of day spilled through windows. The kitchen behind them had come back to life. Staff whispered kind words. No one shouted. No one second-guessed. There was no tension anymore. Only return, timely and complete. 6 months later, Whitmore Prime. Hawthorne Avenue was no longer a restaurant wrapped in rumors. It had become a must-visit destination, earning 5-star reviews from food bloggers and praise from publications like Seattle Life, which describe it as a place where food tells a story, and that story is resurrection. Under the leadership of Julian Whitmore, now officially head chef, the entire operation had been restructured. The menu rotated seasonally, the kitchen redesigned for peak efficiency, and the staff carefully reselect, including several who had stood by Julian during the darkest hours. Grant remained in his senior executive role, but he now focused primarily on long-term strategy, leaving the heart of the kitchen for his brother to truly live in. There were no more clashes over vision, because now they shared one, quality born of integrity and leadership built through service. On a crisp early winter Saturday night, the restaurant glowed with warm golden light. A round table had been set in a special spot, near the large window overlooking the street. It wasn't reserved for VIPs or early bookings. That night, it was reserved for the Whitmore family. Julian stepped out of the kitchen, his white chef's coat now embroidered with silver thread. Julian Whitmore, executive chef. He wiped his hands, adjusted his cuff, then glanced at his older brother standing by the entrance. Grant, too, had swapped his usual business suit for a simple gray sweater. Both turned as a car pulled up outside. Mrs. Vivian Whitmore, 68, stepped out with the help of a private driver. Her silver hair was neatly pinned up, and her dark chestnut wool coat made her look like a figure stepping out of a memory. Mom, both brothers said at once. Vivian looked at her two sons. No longer strangers, no longer two parallel lines, but two men who had overcome pride, pain, and mistakes to stand beside each other again as family. That evening's dinner had no meetings, no KPI reviews, no revenue charts. Just a slow-roasted prime rib Julian had prepared specially, a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon their father once loved, and the laughter of a mother who once feared her sons might never speak again. At the end of the meal, Grant raised his glass. "Thank you for coming home," he said. Not just to the restaurant, but to each other. Julian smiled. "Truth is, I never really went far. I just needed time to learn how to come back the right way." The three clinked glasses. In that moment, no more words were needed. In a world driven by competition, where success is often measured in profits and positions, the story of Whitmore Prime reminds us of this. Integrity is never out of style. Family is never something to be hidden. And sometimes, coming home doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward, together,